There's a moment almost every avoidant person will not admit to out loud. You are sitting across from someone who wanted you yesterday, who texted you first, who leaned in during the last conversation without even noticing they were doing it. And then, without warning, something in your chest turns. Not slowly, not with a reason attached. Just a sudden, physical need to get away from the exact person you were craving 24 hours earlier. I know that moment from the inside because I used to cause it. And by the end of this video, you will understand what actually happens in that turn, why it happens to people you least expect, and why it is almost never about the other person stopping being enough. Here's the part that catches most people off guard. From the outside, it looks like disgust, a flinch, a sudden coldness, which is exactly why it gets called the ick, and exactly why it is so easy to misread, and exactly why almost nobody on either side of it ever get a straight answer for what just happened. You have probably felt it land on the receiving end. Maybe it happened 3 weeks into something that felt like it was finally working, when they suddenly stopped answering the way they used to. Maybe it happened after a small, ordinary moment. You laughed too loud. You said, "I love you." First, you asked what they were doing this weekend, and something behind their eyes shut like a door. Maybe it happened somewhere even smaller than that. A moment you can barely name now. A look that lasted half a second too long, before it emptied out. In that second, it did not feel small. It felt like proof that you had done something wrong, something unforgivable, something you would spend the next weeks trying to identify and undo. But here's the thing almost nobody explains about this moment from the inside. What it looks like from where you are standing and what is actually happening inside them are rarely the same event. If that sounds like something you want to believe just to soften the sting, stay with me. This is not comfort, it is mechanism. I lived on the other side of this reaction for years, and understanding what is actually firing underneath it is the difference between chasing someone further away or finally reading the moment correctly. To be clear, this is not a video telling you the ick is fake, or that it never means anything real. Sometimes it does. This is about understanding what is actually happening underneath it most of the time, so you stop assuming the worst version of the story by default. Let's get into it. For an avoidant person, closeness does not build slowly and safely the way it does for most people. It builds and then crosses an invisible line. And the moment it crosses that line, something inside them registers it as danger, not comfort. Not because you did anything wrong, but because their nervous system was never taught that closeness and safety belong in the same room together. The ick is not disgust at you. It is a threat alarm going off at the exact moment intimacy started to feel real. That is what the sudden shift usually is. Not a verdict on your worth, but a system reflexively slamming a door the second it senses it might not be able to get out later. It happens fast because the alarm is not rational. It is automatic, wired and long before you ever met them. To you, on the other side of it, it feels like being rejected for something specific. To them, in that moment, it rarely feels like a decision at all. It feels like relief. Think about what actually precedes most of these moments. It is rarely a fight. It is rarely a broken promise. Far more often, it is something tender, a compliment that landed too deep, a night that felt too easy, a version of you that felt too available. Closeness that arrives without friction is, to their system, the most dangerous kind, because there is nothing external to blame for the discomfort it creates. So the discomfort gets redirected onto you instead, dressed up as sudden disinterest, when what actually happened had almost nothing to do with anything you said or did. Here is what makes it so disorienting. The shift almost never comes with a reason attached, because most of the time, there genuinely is not one they could name. They are not sitting there cataloging your flaws in real time. They are not thinking clearly at all. What is actually happening is that a wave of closeness hit a wall they did not know was still there, and their body reacted before their mind had a chance to weigh in. They are not running the tape forward to what it will cost them to lose you. They are solving for the panic in the current second. You are the one left replaying every word you said, trying to find the moment you ruined it. This is where most people go wrong in one of two directions. Some immediately blame themselves, rewinding every interaction, convinced that if they had just been calmer, prettier, less needy, more interesting, the door would still be open. Others swing the opposite way, deciding the ick is unforgivable proof of how little they meant, and cut off completely without ever understanding what actually happened. Neither reaction is automatically wrong, but both skip the same step, actually understanding what the reaction was solving for before deciding what it means about you. Because here's what rarely gets said out loud. Chasing someone through the ick almost never brings them back the way you hope. It does not usually prove your worth to them. More often, it confirms the exact fear that triggered the alarm in the first place. That closeness comes with pressure, with pursuit, with someone who will not let the door close. You end up performing reassurance for someone whose system is actively rejecting the very thing you are offering. And the cruelest part is that your chasing does not read to them as love. It reads as confirmation. Picture the pattern up close. You send a longer text explaining you did not mean to overwhelm them. You offer to slow things down, to give them space, to prove you are not the pressure they suddenly feel. Every one of those messages, however well-intentioned, lands as further evidence that you are exactly what the alarm warned them about, someone who needs something from them that they are not sure they can sustain. The more you reach, the more the door seems to confirm it was right to close. There is also a quieter dynamic underneath this worth naming. Part of why the ick tends to hit suddenly, without warning, is that avoidant people are rarely aware of the wall until they are already up against it. It is not premeditated. It is closer to a smoke alarm that only exists to react, not to explain itself. That is why the same avoidant person can want you desperately one week and feel nothing but distance the next, without either feeling like a lie in the moment it happens. Both states were real. Neither one was the whole picture. The ick is not them discovering the truth about you. It is their nervous system discovering the edge of its own tolerance, the exact point where wanting closeness tips over interfering it. Which brings up the real question underneath all of this, not what did I do wrong, but what was actually happening in their system when this hit. Because there's a version of an avoidant person moving past this reaction that is genuinely healthy, one where they notice the alarm, name it out loud instead of acting on it silently, and stay in the room long enough to let the wave pass instead of using it as an exit. That version takes real work, real awareness, and usually real time in therapy or serious self-examination. It does not happen by accident. And it almost never happens because someone loved them hard enough to override it. That healthy version is almost never what is happening in the moment the ick first hits. What is usually happening instead is exactly what it looks like, an unexamined system doing what it was built to do, protecting itself from something it has never learned to tolerate. And absorbing the blame for that too rarely helps either of you. More often, it delays the one thing that would actually serve you, understanding this clearly enough to stop personalizing it. Here is what matters most if you are standing in the middle of this moment right now, on either side of it. The ick is not proof that you were suddenly unlovable, and it is not proof that everything before was fake either. It is proof that closeness touched a wound that had nothing to do with you originally, and everything to do with a system that panics when it gets what it thought it wanted. That is not a judgment on you. It never was. You did not become less desirable in the space of one conversation. You simply got close enough, real enough, that an old alarm went off, one that was built long before you walked into the room. So there are two honest paths forward here, and neither one requires you to hate yourself or them to choose it. If you are the one who felt the ick, the honest path is not silence and disappearance. It is naming what happened, even privately, and taking responsibility for examining it instead of letting it quietly end things that did not need to end. If you are the one on the receiving end, the honest path is not chasing, and it is not spiraling into self-blame either. It is recognizing that this was never fully about you, and choosing whether to stay and let someone do their own work, or to protect your peace and walk towards someone whose alarm system does not go off the moment things start to feel real. Both paths are valid. Neither one makes you weak, and neither one makes you the villain of the story, because the goal was never to prove you deserve to be wanted. The goal is to end up somewhere solid, whether that is with them once they have actually done the work, or somewhere else entirely, with someone whose nervous system already knows how to stay. And that choice starts right now.